necessary or recommendations necessary. So this evening, standard agenda format, we will go through administrative matters. We have one scheduled matter before us this evening, and then there will be any discussion beyond that is not applicable to any scheduled matters before the board. So, if I could ask the board members to review our last meeting minutes back from February.
All the way back?
All the way back to February.
What does that mean?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from February 7th.
All right,
I'll second that.
all right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, meeting minutes are now officially in the record. Okay, this evening, we have one matter before the board. We have Elaine Hosmer, owner of 58 Latham Park. Applicant proposes to convert a single-family house to a single-family house with an apartment. According to Village Code Section 175-12, apartments are not an allowable use in the R1 9.6 zone. Applicant therefore seeks a use variance from the Village Board of Appeals pursuant to Village Code Section 175-76C. Applicable village codes also are 175-12, 175-76. Property is zoned R1-9.6. So, Elaine, if you would, you have to speak.
Okay. I see
Let us
first.
know what your
Do you
plan
need
would
these?
be,
Do I have to say?
please.
Okay. Well, what my plan would be to, it has been used as a house with an apartment since I purchased it in November of 2015. And I currently do have a tenant there. I did not know that it was not legal to use it as a house with an apartment. Prior to purchasing the house, I did go to the town hall. I did not realize that there was a separate village and town hall. And I did speak with somebody in the building and zoning office, and she told me that it was legal to use it as a house with an apartment. I also received a letter confirmation stating that it was legal to use it as a house with an apartment. And when I received my the assessment, tax assessment, it listed it as a residence with an apartment. And one neighbor had spoken to the tenant that I had and said that he didn't think it was legal to use it as a house with an apartment, and that he would fight me using it, getting a tenant after that particular tenant had left, that he did not want me getting a second tenant. And so I did come to the village, and I did ask if it's legal the way I'm using it. And so once again, I was told that it was legal, that I was using it legally. And I did get a second tenant. I did get a tenant. After my first tenant left, I did get another tenant. And Latham Park is a street that has 4 properties that have apartments in them. And also, I would be the 5th house with an apartment. I have put a great deal of effort into fixing up the property, to making it very street beautiful and have a lot of curb appeal. I have, I don't think there's in any way that I have taken away from anybody's property value. If anything, I think I've enhanced the values of properties on the street. I know in my letter I did explain all the different projects that I had done. I don't know if you want me, if I have time to repeat all those projects, but I think it has been an improvement. I have always lived in the house. I have always taken care of any issues. The only thing that I can think of as being that, I know people don't like the ideas of doubles because they think that they're not owner occupied, or that the owners don't take care of the properties, or that the owner is only in it to get the money from the renter, or maybe they think of the city of Rochester and the Park Avenue area where there are some rowdy times there. And, but it is an owner occupied property, and I do address issues as they come up. My tenants have been very good people and quiet people as far as I know. So I'm just gonna be honest, I have had the police come to the house, but it was never for a tenant issue. I did have a relative who was living with me who I was trying to help out, and he is currently in treatment in a different state, and he might be living there for all we know for the rest of his life, but it in no way had anything to do with a tenant. So I'm hoping that my application for a variance is approved so that I may continue to use it as a house with an apartment upstairs.
Okay. All right, just so you understand tonight, the planning board does not approve applications for a variance. We would make a positive or negative recommendation to the zoning board.
Okay.
The zoning board would be the arbiter, the ultimate arbiter, to say yea or nay.
Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is, the other issue that, I understand property values, maybe rowdy tenants, and I know parking can be an issue. And my driveway, although it is narrow, it does have room for 3 cars plus 1 car in the garage, so that is 4 vehicles. And my current tenant does use the village parking lot. And so sometimes during the day, his car is parked on the street. However, it is not during the times that the village does their work, and if anything was ever coming through, I know with the leaf pickup and that, I would, ask him to move it, or, they're very helpful in that way, my tenants, so.
Well, street legal parking is street legal parking.
Okay,
I mean, that's a parking enforcement problem, that's a police issue.
okay,
The car is not parked there when it's not supposed to be. So that can't really be a deciding factor one way or another, as long as the car is parked on the street legally at the right times. It cannot be germane to this conversation, or it shouldn't be germane to the conversation, so.
thank you.
But the fact that they use available municipal parking is a plus, inconvenience to a certain degree, but c'est la vie, it is what it is.
Okay,
I know your driveway is a single wide,
right,
and it becomes a juggling situation with multiple cars, with 2 apartments, so to speak.
yeah, I do, it is a little wider in the back of the house, the parking, and so it is, most cars can turn around and come out front first.
Right, so long as there's not a car in the single.
True, and true, and I wouldn't want it to get bad crowded with the vehicles, so.
Okay,
Thank
Thank
you. Thank you.
anybody, wait, before you go, anybody questions? Nothing? All right. At this point, I would like to ask Will to just give the crowd here a little historical background on this property.
Sure. So originally, Ms. Osborne came into the office and she asked if the house could be legally used with an apartment. And so I went back on the assessor's website, and it said it was a 215, which is the assessor code for house with an apartment. I said, well, at that time, I said, well, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. I said, but nothing triggered yet at that time. And I said, so as far as I know, as long as it continues to be that use, yes. And then a resident came in, and we had a long talk about the use of the place. And then So I did a little more research, and I started to remember a conversation I had with the previous owner, Mrs. Herbst. I remember it was originally a two-family house. It wasn't a house with an apartment, it was a two-family house. And at that time, I think her son was living with her. And then I remember a conversation with her regarding her wanting to revert the use from a two-family to a single-family. So at that time, what I did was, I asked the assessor's office, what do you need from me to make that happen? And the assessor's office said, well, you need to go in there and make sure, the upstairs, certain things are removed, and so that can't be used as a two-family. I said, okay, that's fine. So I asked her to remove a few things, inspected, was satisfied, I wrote an email to the assessor's office to the effect that, I've inspected and I'm satisfied that it's a single-family house now, please, do what you do as an assessor. Well, apparently, unbeknownst to me, and this was back in 2007, so I don't remember what I did 5 minutes ago, let alone it's 2007. The assessors must have gone into the house, and they said, well, not so much a two-family, but we're going to call it a single-family with an apartment. Well, you can't do that. You can't have another non-conforming use in a single-family zone. And they never notified me of that. I assumed once the email was sent, everything was fine. So then I made a phone call to the assessor's office and asked them. I said, what's going on? And then that's when they found the email I had sent, and I went, oh no. So I sent a letter to Ms. Hosmer rescinding my original approval, saying, no, it's a single-family home based on the information I have. And then I corresponded back and forth with her attorney, and he asked, what can Ms. Hosmer do? I said, really, the only thing she can do is ask for a use variance. And that's why we're here.
Okay.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah?
So what did you ask to be removed back in 2007 to make it from what you call a two-family to a single-family?
The appliances were removed, some of the sinks were removed. I left the bathroom because you can have a bathroom upstairs. So basically, whatever you would ordinarily use as an apartment, I asked that to be removed from my consideration.
Okay.
Are there any structural modifications?
Nope.
Walls,
So,
doors?
so what was added back now to make it an apartment?
A gas stove and a refrigerator. The sink was removed in the kitchen upstairs.
The sink was or was not?
Was not,
It was never removed.
no.
I couldn't remember, so.
So they took out a stove and a refrigerator, and that somehow changed it from a two-family to a single-family. Did the place ever have like two separate entrances?
It does,
It's got two separate entrances?
Yeah.
It always had two separate entrances.
yes.
The apartment has a separate entrance.
Yes, it
And
does.
I would just note that the village's zoning code has no definition of two-family.
Okay.
It has a definition of two-family dwelling, which says, a residence designed for or occupied by two families only, with separate housekeeping and cooking facilities for each. And then it's got a definition for an apartment, which simply says, a room or suite of two or more rooms designed or used solely as a residence in a building, not used as a hotel, rooming house, or boarding house. It's hard to distinguish between the difference between apartment and two-family dwelling, because both they just talk about a residence. So, I guess I'm a little confused, but.
I guess there's a lot unwritten that you just assume that you would have separate entrances, separate
Right.
doors,
Address, maybe.
separate means of egress.
But there's no requirement for that,
Right.
Right, in the verbiage.
by definition.
Right, in the verbiage, there's nothing that says these
Right.
things need to be there.
Right. So I guess I'm a little confused by why is an assessor's code, residence with apartment, whatever it is, versus two-family? Why is that driving zoning anyhow? That's the assessor, that's for a whole different purpose. isn't it?
Well, you would imagine so. However, it's in a single-family zone, and she wanted it to be a single-family house. And that's why we went into the house and actually removed some things.
Okay.
And then the assessor came back, as I said, and they reclassified it as a single-family with an apartment. But according to our non-conforming use section of the code, you can't revert it to another non-conforming use. So either the assessor could have said, well, no, you know what, we're still gonna keep it a two-family.
Well, my point is simply, did the non-conforming use ever really stop, other than the fact that maybe it wasn't rented out for a while?
If that's the case, then yes, if it was more than 6 months.
Huh?
If it was more than 6 months, then yes, but I can't, I have no way of proving it.
Okay. Now, we'll get to the public.
Okay.
All right.
I just want to give history on the house.
Okay, that's what we just did.
No,
What do you mean?
it isn't correct. The history of the house is not correct.
As far as we know.
The house was owned by the Herbst family. Mr. Herbst Senior lived upstairs, had his own little kitchen. He used to own a place on Main Street, like a, ice cream parlor and all that.
It's called a spa.
The steak, thank you. And so that place was never, ever rented. Diane and Don lived there. They lived downstairs. Grandpa lived upstairs. It was never a rental property. And then when Grandpa died, their son Jason lived there also. Never, never a rental property.
So it was in-law.
But it was never a
Yeah, I never said
two-family.
it was a rental family, it was a
No,
two-family.
you said two-family.
It was, yeah, and that's.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it
He's the
was.
same family.
It was assessed as a two-family, it was a 220 on the assessor's roll.
Well, the assessors were wrong. It was the same family.
Yeah, but even though it's the same family, if you have the son living upstairs, whatever, it's still,
I'd like to see how many they change in the village if they went around. No, but, I mean, you keep the family together,
yeah.
and that's what they did. It was never, ever to make profit.
And you don't have to make profit on a two-family.
I think her goal is to make profit.
That's up to her, I mean.
Yeah, it is.
Sure.
All right. So, before we get to the public comment, does the board have any questions? For Ms. Osmond?
Is the swimming pool still on the property?
No, it is not. That was removed right away after I purchased, well, the summer after I purchased it.
I had to rub my eyes and look a second time, and I couldn't find it.
No, it's gone.
And the detached garage, it's there, it just isn't in my pictures, is that correct?
Correct, it is there, right, I'm sorry. I
Oh,
should-
no, that doesn't matter.
It is
Just
there, it
making
is,
sure I'm not rubbing my eyes again.
Yeah, it is a three-car garage.
Okay,
It's what?
A three-car garage,
and that's on the other side of the wide parking space at the back,
correct.
right?
It's, yeah, straight back.
Got it?
No.
Okay. All right, just so you are aware, when I got the package, I saw all the letters and I just did my little cheat sheet. This is the timeline that I can map out based upon the information here. So, just, Will has given us information prior to your purchase date of November 15th, November 2015.
Yes.
Okay, so, just, I'm gonna give you some information.
Okay.
The village codes were adopted in December of 2014, this version. Okay, so this is what we are working with.
Sure.
All right, so these codes are applicable prior to the purchase of this house.
Okay.
All right. Included in the package is the listing.
Yes.
Single-family residential,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Right.
So you bought this house with the full understanding and knowledge that it was a single-family residential.
Well, not 100%, because I did go to, and they did say it was coded 215.
You went to the town,
Yes.
which has no bearing,
Right,
unfortunately.
right, but it,
So this is just information,
right,
okay? And then we have the village letter from Will, August of 2016. Then we have your lawyer's response letter, August 24th, 2016. Then we have the 2018 assessment, which shows the code 215, single family with apartment.
Correct.
How that got there, that is a mystery. Because apparently the assessor did something that they should not have done. They can't, as far as I know, they cannot supersede village code
No.
to change the classification of a property. So, legally speaking, without legally speaking being a lawyer, this was purchased as a single-family residential. And then beyond that, 2018 assessment, then there are letters back and forth, and then here we are today.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so that is the timeline that we have available from the documents that were presented. So, if there are no more questions from the board, typically now, this is the public portion of the meeting whereby residents are allowed to stand up, state your name, state your address, and make your comments. So, it is open to the public. Would anyone care to make a statement or comment?
Want me there?
Please.
I have a loud voice, so you can talk that way. My name is James Watson. I live at 51 Lapham Park, and I precede the Rickards there. And I can remember when former Mayor Hawley lived in that house. Our family has lived at 51 Lapham Park since 1961. Was purchased.
Hold on a second. 51.
51.
Describe the house.
It's a gray house, front porch.
Across the street?
Where Bating's house used to be.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Yep.
2 down from Bating's. There's a house in between.
Yep.
Abraham's live in the middle of that house, and we've been there since 1961. House was purchased from the Presbyterian Church when they were still on Main Street, and we've done quite a bit of history on that house since then. Between my brother and I, we delivered newspapers from the early 60s to all those houses through there. And one of the main selling points of that neighborhood at that time, and I think still, is that it was one of the original old historic portions of the village.
Yeah.
And a lot of the founding fathers of the village lived on Lapham Park, Elm Street, Dunning Avenue, Park Avenue, up to Fuller and Gordon Park as it expanded the lower part of Corning over here, as well as East and West Main Street. One of the first things that happened when we lived there within the first 2 years, 62 or 63, is the house to the north of us, which I'm going to say is maybe 45, Lapham Park. I'm not sure. I know Kittleberger's house is 39 from my newspaper days. Be that as it may, my father came and talked to the village because that was going to be proposed to become a double house at that time. Went from a single. And got nowhere in there, but I can assure you that on and off over the 60-some years that our family has been in that house, that neighboring two-family house has been a problem and a disturbance, and a problem to that neighborhood for parking, for upkeep, for maintenance, and general just disrepair, until the current owner, has fixed it up, and we've had minimal problems since we've been there, since I retired and moved back to our homestead 5 years ago. I was also instrumental in directing a family to purchase a house on Lapham Park with young children. Another family recently purchased the Batesing house over there with young children. And our concern there was with multiple family dwellings, the transient type of people that sometimes come in and out, not conducive to families with young children in today's day and age. There's another couple young families right around the corner on Park Avenue. The old Godfrey house has a family that moved in with young children. People are being attracted to those neighborhoods and those streets for the sole purpose of raising their families in single-family dwellings and raising their children and being part of the community. And I mean no disrespect to Ms. Hosmer, we've never met before, but I would take exception. There are people coming and going in that house all the time, and have been since she got that house. And it's a constant, with parking, with traffic. Police calls have been there, which she acknowledged. And my concern is, while the value of the house, certainly, in the assessments, we all stand to gain or lose from that. Multiple family dwellings tend to attract buyers because of the income property it can be. Tends to depreciate single dwelling property values because of the surroundings of multiple family homes. It would be my request and my desire, certainly to speak for ourselves, but I would hope that we could maintain the integrity of the village in those old neighborhood streets by keeping it as a one-family dwelling. And I'd be happy to answer any questions to you. And by the way, Hank Herbst, who was there, who used to run the spa down here, used to live around the corner on Elm Street. Yes, we delivered papers there too.
Yes.
All right, thank
Will,
you.
did I leave anything out?
No, sir, thank you. I would not argue with you.
Okay.
I just
Anyone
ask a question? I just want to ask a question. I don't understand, if she went to the town,
Stand up.
my name's Ann Byers. If you went to the town, why they wouldn't have directed you? They know that the village has their own code and things. They should have directed you to us. And I just, I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me saying that, oh yes, go ahead, without saying you need to come and speak to the
Right, they
village.
did not say that. They did say that there is a separate village, but they did say that that code means, she said
Well,
that she
that's
knew.
not saying yes, you can do it. It's just, she did not, you're saying she didn't direct you to the village to say, you have to check out with their code.
She didn't say that.
So she didn't, so,
No.
okay. Question.
Anyone else?
We're Mike and Jackie Lenhard. We live at 48 Lepper Park with our son. We've been there for about 14 years.
Orient us, relationship to the house?
Right next door,
Right
We're
next door.
north. We're
Todd's old
north.
house.
Yellow House, yes. you got it.
Todd Shalacy's old house. Good.
The old Obie house. Todd
Obie, that old Todd Shalacy.
Obie.
The Barrett House before that.
There you
And the Barrett House before that. So, and we love living in the village, we love our house, but we are very much against this being a double or apartment, whatever you want to call it. The home sale listing was for a single-family home, and Elaine knew that when she bought it, because we had a discussion with her before she actually purchased the house, that this is a single. And she also knew that the swimming pool wasn't legal, and she said, well, I'm gonna keep that, and I have a friend to live upstairs. Since she bought the house, she has had renters nonstop. Currently, there are 5 rental homes in Lapham Park. In comparison, there's only 1 rental house on Elm Street and 3 rental homes on Park Avenue. Adding another rental property in Lapham Park would bring the total to 6 rental properties. Webster Town Hall changed this property listing to a single-family dwelling in 2012, and we'd like it to remain that way, as the village government passed a law that single families cannot be converted to doubles. I did go to the police station because there have been multiple police calls to that address. I have 2 pages that they gave me, starting in August of 2016. These are the police calls.
458 Latham Park.
And this is specifically for 58 Lapham Park.
Most of them are parking violations, but issues.
There
Nonetheless.
are no parking violations. There's SPECB, and then there's like number codes. I don't know what they are. As far as parking, to the best of my knowledge, for each rental unit, you need 2 parking spaces. And yes, she has a 4-car parking lot in the backyard, which Dee put in. She parks 1 car in her garage, and then she has 3 cars parked outside. One has no license plate on it, and it's been there since December. So I think that qualifies as an abandoned vehicle. There's another car that hasn't moved in weeks. I have no idea whose that is, but she drives a black car, and her red car is in storage in the garage. So there's no parking for those tenants. They have to park in the village lot, in which the current tenants do. They seem to be nice, quiet people, and they park in the village lot. But they could move out in 2 weeks, and we have initially 3 men were living up there. We could have another 3 men living up there and parking on, up and down the street. And we don't want to be calling the police because there's, somebody on the street all night. And Jason, the son, did not live there until she bought the house, as was, someone implied that. I printed out Jason's addresses that are easy to Google. Most of the time, he was living in Ontario. He did live on Lapham Park until 2006 or 2007. I just wanted to clarify some of that.
Okay.
But we don't think it should be changed to a double because we have enough on the street, and the village said we're not turning singles into doubles. We put a lot of money into our property too, and
I think everybody has, including all these neighbors here. I know they have.
so, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay, last, Matt?
Matt Chadfield, 62 Park Avenue. So I just, one of the things I want to understand is, we're talking about semantics regarding the land use classification codes and in the relation to the intent of the zoning code itself. So typically, the intent of R196 is for single-family homes. And the village has reiterated that, especially within that 2000, was it the 2010 change to the code?
2014.
Well, what was the law that was passed previously that said no conversion, no deconversion to multifamily? When was that? It was a while ago, right? So the village has reiterated over time the intent of it being a single-family neighborhood. And I don't understand the need to set a precedent that would potentially be actually very detrimental to the rest of the neighborhood. There are plenty of multifamily units historically that have been converted back to single-family. I know we have 3 or 4 on Park Avenue alone. I would hate to see somebody say, well, we're gonna apply to revert the precedent set by 58 Park Avenue, and then we start to, then we basically erode the intent of that law that was passed previously. So I'm not in favor of this particular application, although I do speak highly of what Elaine has put into the facade, especially of her building. It looks beautiful. I'm just not in favor of multiple tenant units in that building, regardless if we call it a multifamily or a single family with an accessory dwelling. We can't control, as a community, we can't control tenancy. In other words, who actually lives there versus who is the fee simple owner of the property. So once that has been established, that there's multiple family units or living units in there, we cannot control who ultimately occupies it. The village would have no recourse to then pull any sort of variance away from them based on the tenancy of the building. So in the end, you'd be opening up Pandora's box for not just this property, for any other future property.
Richard Walder, 20 Elm Street. I live just around the corner. And I'd like to say, agree with Matt wholeheartedly. A lot of us, although my house may not show it, I have put a lot of money into it and tried to fix up a house which the previous owner let run down drastically. In the last year, I've spent over $60,000 on my property. So I understand keeping it up. However, I'm totally against multiple family. We mentioned how many there are on Lapham Park, but if you look at the code, you'll find that all of those are pre-existing non-conforming. That the village has not gone for any new multiple family. And because Grandpa lived upstairs, doesn't make it a multiple family. That's still the same family. whether he had his own kitchen or not, it's still a single-family home. So if there's 4 generations in the house, it's still one family. So that point is mute, and because the town messed up a little bit, I'm sorry, but when you moved to Webster, you moved into the village, you should know where you live when you buy a house. That's kind of nasty, but I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public forum. State your piece, speak your mind. I'm sorry?
Can I go back up?
Yeah.
I really was not going to speak this evening, but I'm Darrell Byers, 36 Elm Street. And my concern is for the number of residences that are multiple family in the village, and especially in the old part of the village. And I feel that the existing, as it was, existing single-family dwelling is the way in which it should be. As the code has, we have, for those existing 2-family places, we have 6 months between occupancy, I suppose you'd say. We've probably even allowed up to a year, but beyond that, it certainly is designed to go back to single families from double families for those that currently exist. And it is what the tenor, I think, of the old village was and is, and I believe that it should remain that way. So my personal feeling is that it should remain a single family dwelling. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and
I just want to say
Oh,
something.
sorry,
My name is
another.
Ann Byers, 36 South Street, not professional. Nothing against you, but you say you're living there, and that's great. If you don't say, they said gas and you could do it. The problem is, it's like, when you decide, I want to live somewhere else, I want to live in Florida, it is now, it's a 2-family apartment, whatever, and you can't control it. We just have one house on our street, on Elm Street, that was, Chuck Watson used to live there, and when he passed, we had some real issues with the people, because we just had some guy come, I found out he was from New York City, he bought the house, great money making, and now, right now it's quiet, it's calm, but we went through a whole nightmare with these young adults that I said, you're not in college. I finally looked at them once, I go, you're not in college town. I understand you're going to college, you have friends, but just if you're living in a neighborhood, you're living with families and children and not. And so this opens that Pandora box. You are one more, how could we say to you, we may let you do it at a double, now you can't sell it as a double. So that's one of the big things, I'm sorry. And I hope, and it hasn't. We can't just say because families live, multi-generations of families live in a house. Because right now we're up to 3 families. My daughter, her children, and Darrell and I. So, we're really breaking the law if you're gonna start saying that. All right, thank you.
Just to reiterate, I'm Chuck Watson's brother on Elm Street, so I'm well aware of the problems that occurred with that house when he left, and I'm still in support of single-family houses in that neighborhood.
Okay, anybody else? Going once, I go,
My name is Linda Mulmer. I'm Elaine Hosmer's sister. I live on Holt Road in Webster, so I'm in the town, not the village. It was my son, Stephen, who was living with Elaine, her aunt, his aunt, who had the parking on the street in violation, and the police was called from time to time for him. He no longer, he's not in New York State right now, he's down in Florida. And if he does come back, he won't be living with my sister. I just wanted to say that. I feel my sister purchased this house. She always said it was, she heard a house with an apartment. And if she went to the town by mistake, being a new person to Webster, why didn't the town revert her back to the village for the proper designation? I feel that, that's to me, it seems like a big slip up by the town not reverting her back to the village. I guess that's all I have to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh.
I just have one question. What is the timeframe and where are we at time-wise, and what recourse does the public have, or what is anything from the planning board needed from people at this point? And what can we expect time-wise?
Well, strictly, at the very beginning, the chairman said, they don't decide to use the variance. They only make, the code talks about, they make an advisory opinion. The ZBA can ignore them, it's just a recommendation. So it's in front of the zoning board in 2 weeks. They're the ones that are gonna make the decision. So you don't need to do anything with respect to the planning board. The important meeting, and this is kind of a quirk with the village code, this is really the only municipality I've been ever involved with that actually has every zoning board application come first to the planning board. It's kind of a waste of time, frankly, in my view, a lot of, but especially, I think especially for use variances. I could see it maybe for area variances where, but be that as it may, that's the way the village code is. It requires advisory opinions.
And that's fine, and that being said though, can we expect to hear a result from the planning board as to what their recommendation would be?
Yes, you will.
What's the time frame for that?
Tonight?
Oh,
Oh, it happens tonight. Okay, so, any other public comments? Going once, going twice. Okay, public commentary is closed, the discussion is over. Wait,
Did you receive any letters?
oh, I'm sorry, yes, you were right. I have it right here in front of me. Back open to the public. I did receive an email that was just passed to me, and I will read it verbatim. This is from Justin Carl and Erica Carl, residents at 58 Park Avenue, which is right around the corner from your house, Matt's neighbor, I believe, right? Yeah, Justin. Okay, and he states, I was wondering why things had gotten so quiet at this house, period. 58 Latham has been quite loud in the past with what I believe to be domestic and personal altercations that occurred at various hours of the day and night. Police had also been called to that location more than once. Seeing as how we share an open border with this residence, based on past history, I am concerned for the safety of my children, ages 3 and 5 years old, and I am against 58 Latham Park becoming designated as a single family with an apartment. Okay? So, no more public commentary, back to the board. Does the board have any other questions or comments?
I don't have any questions, it's just, it's an unusual situation, not taking into, any of the police calls and that sort of thing, that's not what we're here for tonight. Yeah, going to the town board, that was just, a fluke of bad luck. And why they didn't speak up to you and say, you're not in the town, you're in the village. So for that reason,
The village had it listed the same way. The village, excuse me for interrupting, but the village had it listed as a house with an apartment also.
but we followed that whole sequence there.
But that goes against the
Listed
listing.
as a single.
This is the listing that's
Right.
provided in the package, which says single-family residential.
And I think it says on their village address.
Yeah, well,
Right.
58 Latham Park, single-family residential.
Just
This
to
is the
clarify,
listing that was given to me.
just to clarify, the town is the assessing unit of the village.
Oh, right.
Yes, right, but not, so, people being people, they make mistakes. There is human error
Oh,
involved
sure.
in every
Right,
situation,
but I would have been told
unfortunately.
the same thing.
So, Peter, Kathy, you good?
Will, could I ask you a question, please? If Mrs. Hosmer went away, what does the house revert to if we weren't having a meeting tonight?
I don't follow your question.
The building itself,
Okay.
what is it now?
Technically, you're right now, well, not technically, it is. It should be a single-family house.
Okay. All right. Now, my comments. All right. I understand your situation. You're in a bad spot. However, this house, per the listing, says single-family residential. The house physically sits in a residential district classified as R1-9.6. The code book specifically states, in residential R-1-9.6 districts, only the following structures and uses shall be permitted: single-family dwellings and their accessory uses and structures. And then that's A. There is B, subject to site plan approval for schools, churches, libraries, telephone exchanges, utility substations, private swimming pools. And then there is a C clause, special permit use is applicable in Article 15 upon the approval of the Board of Appeals as herein provided. So, normally, I look for any wiggle room because we try to accommodate the homes in the village. But there is no wiggle room here based upon the village code. So I cannot see any way, shape, or form for a positive recommendation to the zoning board for a variance for the structure to be classified as anything but a single family, unfortunately. Now, I did read Article C, or subparagraph C, that says special permit use. That is your out. You could technically take this, so long as the zoning board, if they agree with the planning board and say, no, we like this single-family home to be a single-family home, then you, I believe, could technically, with the help of your legal team, go as far as the state appeals board, per se, I would think.
Well,
I don't have that 176 section.
yeah, the special permit use
Yeah.
is very specific to what the zoning board can issue a special permit to,
Mhm.
and this is not one of those listed.
Ah,
That's why we're here for a use variance, or will be in 2 weeks to the zoning board for a use variance.
right. So, I even went to the code book looking for any other potential outs, and I went to section 175-61. Says alterations of existing dwellings. Could you sneak through there? But the trap was written, and it said, except a residential R-1.9.6. So, ixnay. Unfortunately, there is no way the planning board tonight could make a problem. Well, I could not agree to put forth a motion for a positive recommendation to the zoning board. But at this point, I will ask my fellow members of the planning board would anyone care to make a motion for a positive or negative recommendation to the zoning board to have this structure classified as a single family with apartment?
I'll make a motion for a negative motion for the zoning board.
So a motion for a negative recommendation,
For the zoning.
change of, or for the classification of this property to be a single family with an apartment
To the ZBA.
to the ZBA. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Okay,
It's tough, it's a tough situation.
Thank you.
to be in.
Thank you.
okay, that concludes our business in front of the board this evening. I would like to publicly state that there are additional training opportunities for the board. Please take advantage of them to get your training hours for the year.
We went Monday.
I know you guys are ahead of the curve. I'll get my stuff done this year. Okay, so, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? It is, 7:55.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
And I will second that motion. All in favor? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.